Hello everyone, and welcome to the next video of microeconomics. In the last video we studied about shifts in demand and supply curves. Now let's move on to the very important concept of elasticity. Let's start with elasticity of demand. In our discussion of market demand, we said that demand curves are generally downward sloping. That is, if prices are reduced, buyers' demand increases, right? However, we did not mention the size of this increase in demand. Our study of demand was qualitative. That is, we talked about the direction in which quantity demanded moves. But the discussion was not quantitative. We did not talk about the size of this change. To do that, let's introduce the concept of elasticity. The price elasticity of demand measures how much the quantity demanded responds to a change in price. Okay? It measures how much the quantity demanded has changed with respect to a change in price. So it is a quantitative concept. It's measuring the amount of change. It measures how willing consumers are to move away from a particular good as its price rises. Demand for a good is said to be elastic if the quantity demanded responds substantially to changes in price. Okay? If the quantity demanded changes drastically, changes substantially to changes in the price, then the demand is said to be elastic. And demand is said to be inelastic if the quantity demanded responds only slightly to changes in price. So if you change the price, if the price has changed and the quantity demanded changes a lot, then the good is said to be elastic. But if there is only a slight change in the quantity demanded with respect to change in price, then the good is said to be inelastic. In more mathematical terms, price elasticity of demand is defined as the percentage change in the quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. Okay? So price elasticity of demand is percentage change in quantity demanded upon percentage change in price. Obviously, since quantity demanded is negatively related to price, the percentage change in quantity will always have the opposite sign as the percentage change in price. Right? If the percentage change in price is positive, the percentage change in quantity demanded will be negative. And if the percentage change in price is negative, the percentage change in quantity demanded will be positive. So they'll always have opposite signs. However, we can ignore the negative sign. We don't need it. We can simply report the elasticity as positive. So let's say that when the price of chocolate changes from Rs 5 to Rs 10, the quantity demanded decreases from 1000 to 800. Then percentage change in quantity demanded is 800 minus 1000 by 1000 into 100, which is minus 20%. I hope you know this. Now we can drop the negative sign. So we get percentage change in quantity demanded as 20%. And percentage change in price is 10 minus 5 by 5 into 100, which is 100%. We have just used the basic formula of percentage change. Percentage change is basically final quantity minus initial quantity upon initial quantity into 100. So this is what we have used here. Now price elasticity of demand will be then 20 by 100, which is 0.2. Now a price elasticity of demand less than 1 means the good is inelastic. Okay? If the price elasticity of demand is less than 1, we say that the good is inelastic. A price elasticity greater than 1 means the good is elastic. Okay? Price elasticity of 0 means the good is perfectly inelastic. And price elasticity of infinite means the good is perfectly elastic. Okay? A price elasticity of 0 means that there is no percentage change in demand, no matter how much what the price changes. So it obviously means that the good is perfectly inelastic. The quantity does not change at all. No matter how much you change the price, the quantity will remain the same. So the good is perfectly inelastic. And a price elasticity of infinite, it means that even if you change the price very slightly, the percentage change in quantity will be infinite. It will change a lot. So the good is perfectly elastic. For a very slight change in price, it has changed a lot. So the good is perfectly elastic. Okay? Now the graph of a perfectly inelastic good is shown. Now you can see that no matter what the price, the quantity demanded remains the same. At this price, the quantity demanded is 100. So is at this point, also at this point, also at this point, right? Now what can be an example of a perfectly inelastic good? Well, obviously there will not be a perfectly inelastic good in the real world, but some goods which are highly inelastic are food grains or life-saving medicines, right? Even if the prices of food grain increases a lot, you still need to consume them, right? So you will still purchase them. Therefore, food grains are a good example of goods that are inelastic. So are life-saving medicines. Even if they are expensive, you need to buy them, right? Now, a graph of a perfectly elastic good is shown. In this case, very small changes in price leads to a huge change in the quantity demanded. Now you can see that at this point, the consumers will buy any quantity. However, at a price above it, quantity demanded is 0, a very drastic change. And at price below it, quantity demanded is infinite, again a very drastic change. Now between these two extreme cases, we can have the following cases. As we can see, the flatter the curve, the more elastic it is. Alternatively, the steeper the curve, the more inelastic it is, right? And a vertical curve means the demand is perfectly inelastic. A horizontal curve means the demand is perfectly elastic. Okay? Now another point to understand here is that elasticity of demand of any product may be different in the short run and in the long run. Take for example the demand of petrol. In the short run, the demand of petrol is more inelastic, right? If the price of petrol is increased, people who have cars which run on petrol do not have much option other than to keep buying petrol, right? But in the long run, people will buy less petrol cars. They will shift to alternate fuel cars, like, cars which run on diesel or battery or CNG. Companies will start making cars which are more fuel efficient. And if the government starts investing in public transport, like Delhi Metro, people will start shifting to that. So in the long run, the demand is obviously more elastic. In the short run, demand is generally inelastic. Immediately, people cannot look for alternatives. But in the long run, people look for other alternatives. Okay? Now, what determines the price elasticity of demand for any good? Well, we will study two key factors which affect the elasticity of any product. The first one is availability of choice for the buyers. So if the buyers have more choice for any good, the elasticity of that good will be more, right? This is pretty obvious. If people have other options, the price increases, people will shift. So the good will be elastic. But if people do not have any options, even if the price increases, they have to purchase. So that good will be more inelastic. So for example, in case of luxury goods, buyers have more choice in the sense that they can afford not to buy that good, right? In case of luxury goods, people can choose not to buy. That is also an alternative, right? For example, luxury yachts have very high elasticity. Since if the price increases, people may stop buying yachts. It's a luxury item. People don't need them. But in case of necessities, such options are not available for the buyers. Take the option of life-saving medicines. The buyers of such medicines do not have much choice, do they? They cannot stop buying such medicines. So such necessity goods are a lot more inelastic. Another way in which choice affects the elasticity of any good is the availability of close substitutes. The elasticity of ice cream is more since it has close substitutes like frozen yogurt or chocolates. But let's say in India, railways do not have any close substitutes, so its demand is more inelastic. Okay? So the first factor was availability of choice for the buyers. In that we studied availability of close substitutes, whether close substitutes are available or not. And second thing is whether that item is necessity or is it a luxury item. If close substitutes are available, the demand is more elastic. And if it's luxury item, then again the demand is more elastic because people have a choice to not buy that item. Even if close substitutes are not available, people can simply not buy that item, right? It's not necessary to buy. Now, another thing which decides the elasticity of any product depends upon how we define that product. The broader the definition, the more is the inelasticity, right? For example, food has very high inelasticity. We have defined it as very broadly, food is a very general term. So it is very inelastic. But wheat has a lot more elasticity, right? Wheat is a much narrower term and its elasticity is a lot more than the elasticity of food. Instead of wheat, you can consume rice, you can consume jowar, you can consume bajra. But food has no substitute. You have to eat something, right? To survive, you have to eat something. Now take another example. Demand of cars is much more inelastic than the demand for a particular brand of car, let's say Maruti WagonR. The demand of Maruti WagonR will be a lot more elastic than the demand for cars. So how we define the product also determines the elasticity of that product. Okay. Now let's move on to elasticity of supply. In case of supply as well, to turn from qualitative to quantitative analysis of the quantity supplied, we will use the concept of elasticity of supply. The price elasticity of supply measures how much the quantity supplied responds to changes in the price. Supply of a good is said to be elastic if the quantity supplied responds substantially to changes in the price. And supply is said to be inelastic if the quantity supplied responds only slightly to changes in the price. The price elasticity of supply depends on the flexibility of sellers to change the amount of good that they produce. For example, supply of beachfront land in Goa has almost inelastic supply, as it is almost impossible to get more of the beachfront land, right? The beachfront land is limited, its supply is limited, so its supply is very inelastic. You cannot simply produce more land, can you? But the supply of cars is more elastic, as producers can run their factory for longer periods of time to produce more of them. Producers can also start new factories, right? Now in mathematical terms, elasticity of supply is defined as the percentage change in quantity supplied divided by the percentage change in price. Okay? And similar to the price elasticity of demand, price elasticity of supply also depends upon the time period being considered. Supply is usually more elastic in the long run than in the short run. Okay? This is similar to the elasticity of demand, and the reason is pretty similar. Over short periods of time, firms cannot easily change the size of their factories, right? Firms cannot easily change the size of their factories to make more or less of any good. But over long periods, firms can build new factories, or they can also close old factories, right? Also, new firms can enter the market and old firms can shut down. So supply is more elastic in the long run than in the short run. Now, similar to the graphs that we got for elasticity of demand, we have the following figures for elasticity of supply. A perfectly inelastic supply is represented by a vertical line, and a perfectly elastic supply is represented by a horizontal line. And in between we have various different supply curves. The steeper the curve, the more inelastic the supply. Conversely, the flatter the curve, the more elastic it is. Okay? Now that we have understood basic concepts of supply and demand, as well as the concept of elasticity, let's understand some basic applications of them. First of all, let's understand the paradox of poverty of farmers. Now it's very easy to understand that in case the crop of a farmer fails, the farmer faces immense financial hardships. That's not difficult to understand, right? Crop has failed, so obviously the farmer will face hardships. But can good news for farming be bad news for farmers? Is that possible? That is, in case of bumper crops, can farmers still suffer financial loss? Let's try to analyze this with the help of supply and demand curves. So how do we make supply and demand curves of agricultural commodities? Well, in case of agricultural commodities, both the supply and demand are inelastic, right? Why is supply inelastic? Well, the suppliers are farmers who face several difficulties due to which they need to sell their product quickly. First of all, most food items are perishable. So, it needs to be sold quickly. Farmers do not have storage facilities with them. So it needs to be sent to the storage facilities quickly, otherwise the food will get perished. Then farmers in India incur huge costs in growing crops, and generally they take loans from money lenders, and that loan needs to be given back quickly or the interest incurred will become very high. And obviously, demand is inelastic. We know that demand is inelastic because food is a necessary item. So we have the following demand and supply curves. Now this is just hypothetical data. So but let's analyze it. We can see that equilibrium price is rupees 25 per kg and the equilibrium quantity is 50 kgs. So total revenue is 25 into 50, which is 1250. Okay. Now let's say in any particular year, we get a bumper crop. So in that case, the supply curve will shift to the right. Now let's shift the supply curve to the right. We can see that the new equilibrium price is rupees 10 per kg. The price has fallen drastically because the supply and demand curves are very inelastic. And the new equilibrium quantity is 60 kgs. The quantity demanded hasn't increased a lot because the demand curve is inelastic. So demand will not increase a lot. So the new total revenue will be rupees 600. Now as can be seen, the revenue of the farmer has declined immensely, right? From 1250, the revenue has decreased to less than half. So this is a drastic fall in revenue. And this is a very critical case, right? In case farming is good in any particular year, the revenue of farmer has fallen so drastically. So let me ask you a question. Think about it from the point of view of a farmer. A farmer may be ready to suffer losses in case his crop fails. A farmer will accept that. But if he incurs losses even in case of good crops, will the farmer want to grow such crops? Obviously not, right? If farmers suffer a huge loss due to bumper crops, next year production will see a huge decline. Farmers will stop producing such crops, right? Hence, there will be a lot of fluctuations in the production of agriculture products. So that is the reason why Indian government gives minimum support price to farmers. What is minimum support price? In minimum support price, the government is willing to buy all quantities of some crops at an attractive price. The price is just below the market price, but it's still an attractive price. So with the government willing to buy all quantities at an attractive price, the farmers won't incur a loss, even if the market price goes very low. Now I've said that MSP is generally lower than the market price, but I mean the average market price, the normal market price. I don't mean the unnatural low market price which has occurred due to a bumper crop. So MSP is generally slightly below the average or the normal market price. Okay. So it ensures the farmers that even if the market price falls a lot, his revenue will not fall below a certain level. He will get at least this much price, a minimum base level, this much price at least he'll get. Okay. But note that the government does not give MSP for all food crops. And the reason for that is very obvious. If the government announces MSP for all crops, it will have to buy unlimited quantity of all the crops, which is not practically feasible. And also the government does not have enough storage facilities for all the crops. Hence only those crops which are crucial to food security are supported by MSP. Now another term which you may have heard which is related to agricultural commodities is procurement price. So what is the difference between MSP and procurement price? Well, while the MSP provides guarantee to buy unlimited quantity at a particular price for selected crops, procurement price guarantees to buy only limited quantity for distribution in public distribution system and for buffer storage. Okay. And while the MSP is usually slightly below the market price, procurement price is at or above the market price. Now the objective of MSP is to protect the interest of farmers in case of overproduction, while the procurement price protects the interest of both the farmers as well as consumers. How consumers? Well, through PDS and buffer stock. Okay. Now MSP is announced before sowing. so that farmers have a minimum guarantee before sowing that even if the price falls a lot, they will not lose money. Before sowing, farmers have this guarantee and therefore they will go ahead with the production. So MSP is announced before sowing. On the other hand, procurement price is announced after harvest. Okay, whatever the prevailing market cost is, government will procure at that price or just slightly above that price. So that price has to be announced after the harvest. Okay. Now central government announces both MSP and procurement prices on the recommendations of Commission of Agricultural Costs and Prices, which is called CACP. And while deciding the prices, state governments are also consulted. Let's end this video at this point. In the next video, we will discuss two more concepts of microeconomics, which are price ceilings and price floors. So let's meet in the next video. Goodbye for now.